All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining our request for proposal or RFP information session. In this session, we will cover what Best Start Central Long Beach is and who it consists of. We will also review the RFP application and review examples of previously funded projects as well. We will also take questions and answers at the end of the presentation that will also be added to the Long Beach Forward website for reference, along with the multilingual slides and recording. So my name is Lidia Flores, and I am the Early Childhood Program Manager in Long Beach Forward, supporting Best Start Central Long Beach. So with that information, we can move on to who is Best Start, or what is Best Start? And the Best Start Central Long Beach is an initiative funded by First 5 LA, working to create the best possible communities for young children and their families. Best Start Central Long Beach brings together parents, community organizations, institutions, and others in Long Beach to improve policies and resources to better support parents and create a community where children and families can thrive. Best Start Central Long Beach also provides skill building and leadership training to help the group achieve its goals and to ensure that children are safe and healthy, ready to learn. And we have that in Spanish and Khmer as well. So the community change agenda, which are these 4 priorities that we see here, it was created by parents, caregivers, and family-focused organizations in our Long Beach community. Through a democratic process in 2018, the different groups identified these 4 pressing issues in Long Beach affecting families. These 4 issues became priorities that guide all of the work that Best Start Central Long Beach does. And that includes all of the community projects, the network building grants, the community partnership meetings, and leadership programs. So to review these, we have build community knowledge on child development and parenting skills, prevent child abuse and neglect, increase access to quality and affordable childcare, and increase access to quality and affordable housing and economic security. So at first glance, these priorities might seem broad, but that's because it lends itself to the projects themselves being creative and how they address the priorities. We will review different examples of projects that have been previously funded that meet one or more of these priorities later in the presentation. So if you want to see these actually in practice, we will absolutely cover this. And since these are community identified priorities, all of the RFP applications must address at least one of them to ensure that the community needs are being met. So the request for proposal itself, the previously mentioned community change agenda is furthered by community change funds. So that is the $170,000 that is available for the request for proposals. So the applications that we receive through the RFP process will request between $10,000 to $50,000 from this year's community change funds. So as we mentioned before, the 4 Best Start priorities, also known as the community change agenda, seek to improve the lives of children prenatal to age 5 and their families in Long Beach through education, community building, and policy and systems change. So the proposals for this opportunity will be voted on by the Best Start Central Long Beach Community Partnership in May, and the projects will be funded by June 2023. So all of the project proposals must align with a minimum of one of the community change priorities. So now we can actually talk about the application itself. So you can access the application in 3 different ways. We have the English, Spanish, and Khmer version. You can access all of these applications on the Long Beach Forward website. You can also access them through the links in the Google form that you use to register for this info session itself. And you can also access them through this presentation once it's available on our website as well, which should be very shortly. So looking at the actual presentation, the actual proposal, the top half of this first page is just context that we just reviewed previously in the different slides. And when we actually look at the grant timeline, these are just very important deadlines to keep in mind. So we open the proposals on April 1st, and they will be closing Tuesday, May 2nd at midnight. After we receive all of the proposals, the community will be voting on those to allocate the $170,000 between May 13th and May 26th. So all of you will be, or all the applicants will be informed by email if the project has been approved or declined. So as far as eligibility, since this is Best Start Central Long Beach, we require that the applicants must have programs or projects operating within Long Beach. And of course, applicants must operate without illegal discrimination on the basis of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, age, national origin, or disability. Events that have a religious or political focus are not eligible, and all projects will be required to participate in the nonprofit partnerships system change evaluation process. This second page out of 5 is really just talking more about these info sessions, the one that you are currently in, as well as the actual proposal evaluation criteria. So all of the proposals that will be accepted will be evaluated by a review committee who will determine the extent of which of the following criteria are being met. So that includes the proposed program, if it's compatible with the organization's mission and has a systems change component, which we will be referring to a little later in the presentation, and the purpose of the program stated above. The program must effectively address the identified community change agenda priorities, at least one, and produce an impactful and innovative solution. The organization effectively describes how they can help grow the partnership and add value to the community change agenda. It will also, objectives must also be clear, compelling, measurable, and achievable within the funding period, which would be between June of 2023 until June of 2024. So a full year in the program, full program year. And another of the criteria is that there is a realistic budget to support the program proposed, demonstrating efficiency in the use of funds. So it would be very helpful to see how an applicant shares equipment or leverages or matches funds and seeks support from multiple resources. So with this in mind, once we review all of the application and it is filled out by any prospective applicants, it will be emailed to Lydia at LB Forward no later than midnight on May 2nd. And of course, in the subject line of the email, there should be the grant program and the organization's name as well. So the third part of this application is a cover sheet. So this is just some basic information about the organization, about the funding request information. So how much of the budget is being requested. There's a space to describe what the community change agenda priority is that it's furthering, and just some contact information for the proposal. There is also a section here within the application to provide a brief history and background of the organization. So a quick 3 to 4 sentences about how the organization came to be. And finally, a small part of a proposal summary. So what is it that these funds are meant to be used for? And there will be another opportunity to describe it at length, which is actually this 4th page. So this is the narrative portion of the application. So there are 12 different questions that will require some more detail, some more a comprehensive response for each. And the responses to the narrative section of this application shouldn't exceed 5 pages. but we can just go through all of them and I can provide some extra context to really clarify what is being asked. So the first question here, again, referring to the four previously described community change priorities, it's to describe how the program aligns with at least one of the priorities. Second, it's to describe the population that will benefit from the proposed program. So if a collaborative is applying, they might also include the list of stakeholders that will be involved, different organizations that might step in, and how they might support the project and the implementation of the project as well. Then describing the program's goals, objectives, and measurable outcomes. And again, we will be referring to previously funded projects and project proposals to really help put this in perspective. But in those measurable outcomes, we would really like to see a description of the types of services that will be provided, the target population, the number of people to be served, and if the grants are being requested for continuing programs, and there should also be a summary of the program's accomplishments or the results of what has been most recently completed for that project. And then how to specifically apply the funds. Again, this application can grant $10,000 to $50,000 for an application. So just a bit more detail about how that can be utilized. And then this question of describing how your program or project contributes towards social change in your community. In your explanation, describe the social, political, or institutional systems that will be impacted by your activities. Also, how do residents or community members contribute to these strategies? So going back into the PowerPoint, we can see this described a little different. So a systems and policy change component that was previously referred to in this application. Some examples that we can also see in the previously funded projects was, is it multilingual? Are there resources or knowledge that is being shared between the organizations and the participants of these projects? How are parents being empowered? Is that a component of it? Is there a leadership development portion? And might that even lead to motivate parents, the participants, to be more involved, civically involved, or might that empower people to assume newly elected positions? And that can mean in the school board, as a council member, as a mayor, or others. So that is one way to think about answering that specific question. And then we have describe how the organization's current participation is in the Best Start partnership. So for those that are unfamiliar with Best Start Central Long Beach, the Best Start partnership is an in-person gathering that we have every other month. It's a way for the Best Start Central Long Beach network to connect with each other and to learn about relevant issues and even get connected to important resources and to just continue shaping the work that is all about Best Start. So there are sometimes we tend to have presentations, including guest speakers. Most recently, we had city council members, local organizations, and partnering organizations. In those partnership meetings, we also have trainings and activities for parents, caregivers, and local organizations to lead and to be a part of. So with that in mind, if you are new to the partnership space, you can describe how you envision your participation and integration into the partnership. Question number 7 asks, describe how your organization engages with community members. And in that explanation, to also describe how the Best Start Central Long Beach leadership team will also be involved in the project. And again, just for some context, the Best Start leadership team is a group of 13 people, primarily residents, who are involved in Best Start Central Long Beach, who help guide the network's efforts and implement the work that leads to systems change around the four priorities, the four best start priorities. And these members, who are, like I mentioned, are comprised of resident leaders and organizational representatives. They are elected and serve 2 years, and they are elected by the community partnership in those meetings that was previously mentioned. So different ways that can be described on how community members and the leadership team can be involved. You can elaborate on certain outreach plans, or maybe there can be a part of the program planning process, maybe the organization or applicant each. Question number 8 asks, describe how your organization provides capacity building opportunities to community members. And like we mentioned before in the slides, we do a lot of leadership development, a lot of skills building, a lot of different types of trainings. So this is a great opportunity to describe just how that organization can provide that capacity building to the community. And question number 9 asks to describe similar programs that your organization has launched before, if any, and the notable challenges and successes it has had. So the 10th is similar to the first, but this asks how the community change priorities, so those 4 best start priorities, how they align with the mission of the organization as a whole. The 11th question is to describe any long-term plans on the organization has for funding the program. So that would really help to include any additional information about secured or pending funding, the names and amounts, to really see how this can be sustainable. And the last question in the narrative portion of this application is to describe how the applicant will evaluate the success of the use of the funds. And a second question there of, will your organization be able to provide quarterly progress reports and share updates at those in-person partnership meetings? So of course, with all of the best start work, we want to connect the community, to connect different organizations and update what that looks like, and see how everyone can really support that within itself and really provide those updates within the partnership meetings that are already scheduled to be every other month. So that is the 12 questions in the narrative component. And like I mentioned before, we will get to previously funded projects. So the last portion of this application is just to provide the organization's current budget and most recent 990 tax form, if applicable, and with the other application materials. So since we have seen the application as a whole, now we can really see how those questions, how the narrative and the budget can really look like and be drawn out a bit more through these 4 different previously funded projects that have come out of our most recent participatory budgeting efforts. So this is just one example here. And just for clarification, the RFP application that will be submitted does not have to be formatted this way. This is just something that we use that came out of the participatory budgeting cycles most recently. And now we're doing RFP, so we have a different application. But still, the content of this can really help inform what the content of the application as well. So some things that you can see here. This project, most recently funded, is called New Job, New Life. This was a collaborative project made by community organizations who identified partnering organizations. And as you can see here, there is a brief description similar to what is asked in the original RFP application, to really just give a little bit of information about how many people are being involved, what is the purpose of the project, what are some outcomes that are measurable to really help quantify what the project can do. There's also a clear space to describe which one of the 4 priorities it's addressing. And as we mentioned before, it is a requirement to connect to at least one of the community change priorities. And there's different ways, different projects, they can actually do more than one as well. But it's very creative. It's open to the applicants, it's open to the community, to the organizations on how that looks like and how everything can be involved. But then we have a full description to really describe a bit more about how the project looks like in practice, how many people can be involved. There's a portion here in this specific project that mentions that unemployed parents, single mothers, elders, new immigrants, non-English speakers. So that is saying the target population that is going to be served. And there are even questions about how does this address systems and policy change? And it's written here as well of how providing training that families might not have access to can really open doors to new job opportunities, how there are important skills, there's a skill building component, there are resources, sharing of resources, there are different skills that will be learned. And it's, of course, this is Best Start. This is for the families, specifically with young children, 0 to 5. And then there is a timeline component, fairly broad, but broad can mean creative and flexible. So this specific project really just, it had approximations of the order of the things that would have to happen in order for this project to be completed within the program year. So there are different things that can be listed there, such as administrative tasks, orientation, and different components of the project itself. And over here at the bottom, we have amount requested. And we're going to see in different examples of how that can actually be detailed on how those funds can be spent. So now we can move on to a different example. So this project is called Let's Learn Together. So similar layout as the previous one. And as we mentioned before, the description quantifies how many parents, how many families will be served, what that program looks like. This specific project was a series of projects that focused on preventing child abuse and neglect, but also it aligned with the building community knowledge on parenting skills and child development. And the anticipated outcomes are listed very clearly here about different strategies, the different resources, and how one of the priorities is going to be very focused. And similar to the previous example, there is a description here on how it actually addresses systems and policy change. And just to clarify, all of these examples are available here in the PowerPoint in the presentation that will also be linked to the website. So you should have access to all of these to refer back to. So in this specific project, the addressing the systems and policy change looked like the skills sharing, the connection with each other, the resource sharing, and even the greater awareness of the participants that might lead parents to advocate for more resources and services at the city level. So that really helps with the momentum in challenging those current systems and policies, since they are part of the root issue of the lack of education, of resources and services. So this specific project has the timeline sketched out a little bit clearer. So there are specific, this project was very collaborative with different organizations leading a specific workshop. So this specific timeline really shows who is supporting in what way, how that might look like, if it's virtual or in person, which topics would actually be the focus of the presentations. And towards the bottom here, we have the amount requested here as well. So we are going to see a different example here as well. And of course, the projects can look a lot of different ways. The previous examples were just one cohort of 25 to 40 participants. And this specific project is tracking, is describing two different cohorts. And even a second, a subcategory of 90 parents who can participate in an extended training. And this was specifically mental health first aid training for youth. So you can always refer back to this in a different ways. So there are just different ways, as you can see, to describe how the community change agenda is addressed, how the anticipated outcomes can look like. And so this we can see that the budget itself it's described a little differently on how the funds, like an approximation of how interpretation and child watch might be involved for the in-person workshops, how educational supplies might add up, stipends for the participants as Besser Central Long Beach does a great effort in making everything as accessible as possible. A lot of our projects have built-in interpretation for Spanish and Khmer. There's usually a child watch component for in-person meetings. If it's allowed in the budget, we also have like bus passes for transportation access as well. We normally have food to really make that as accessible as so everyone is just so more comfortable being able to show up, really take in the information, connect with each other, and not really be so not be unable to join or be as present as possible because a lot of immediate needs aren't being met without these accommodations. So with that in mind, these are different ways to utilize funds to make it as accessible as possible with as many different people in this community as possible. So again, that's a different description of how to manage funds or approximate funding. And last but not least, we also have this different project that is called the Child Care Incubator Project. So similar thing, description, community change goal that it's addressing, that anticipated outcomes, a description of what it's doing, how is it being done, or the plan for it. And of course, everything not everything goes perfectly as planned. There's always wiggle room for that. But we always want the funds and the project to be as close to the essence of what was originally voted on by the community when available. So that was always an option. And the project timeline can look a lot of different ways. Sometimes it starts immediately, sometimes an organization needs some prep time for like the administrative component of getting the presenters involved or administrative tasks, and again the amount requested. So all of these are available to you all, and they will be on the website as well, and that should really help explain a little bit more on how this application can be used and how to answer those questions as well. So as I mentioned before, you can access this application both in all the English, Spanish, and Khmer versions, and in 3 different ways, and I can drop these in the chat. So we do have this available on the Long Beach Forward website, and I can drop that in the chat like I mentioned. And they are also linked to the Google form where you all registered for this info session. Drop that in the chat as well. And it will be on the website. Sorry, it will be, yeah, actually the slideshow and this recording all be available on the website itself. So when we actually look at the, skip over a bit, at the application process, you can access the application itself a lot of different ways. Then you can download it. So just a quick little tutorial. You can download it as a Word document. As soon as you do that, you can fill it out completely, and you can send it to lydia@lbforward.org by Tuesday, May 2nd at 11:59 p.m. the latest. And after the deadline has closed, the community will vote for all of the applicants between May 13th to May 26th. And we will also be notifying the applicants if they have been approved or declined by early June. And for those who have been approved, the contracts will be signed and the funds that were requested will be transferred by mid-June. So all of these dates are on the application itself and the website on Long Beach Forward. So that concludes the presentation. If you have any questions, we have different folks that you can connect with. We have Lekina U for Kamai, for assistance in Kamai, and we have Lidia Flores and Carla Alvarado to assist in English and Spanish. So if you have any questions, feel free to call, to email,